In this video, we are going to talk about how to compute new variables and also how to address missing data. So let's start first with computing new variables. And we did this last night in the context of creating z-scores. So the first thing that we talked about needing to do was remembering what our formula was. And our formula was subtracting the mean from the individual value and dividing that difference by the standard deviation. So let's go back to that same variable, quiz 3. We were just looking at that in our previous video. And here we have the mean and the standard deviation. So I don't need to run the descriptive statistics again. What I do need to do, however, is take out a little pad of paper and write down the mean, which is 77.012, and the standard deviation, which is 2.13. I'm going to round that up, 2.13. All right, so here I go to compute variable. Pull this over. So we're working with quiz 3, so I'm going to call it quiz 3 underscore z. And it's going to let me know this is my z-score. And I am going to now create my numeric expression. So I'm going to throw up those parentheses, and I'm going to put in quiz 3. Now see how I'm not typing quiz 3 in here on my own? I'm using this nice little dialog box to help me do some of the work, and that way I don't type something in wrong. All right, so I put in the minus sign, and now I got to put in the mean, and that's 77.012. And I'm going to divide that difference by the standard deviation, which is 2.13. And that's it. That's my numeric expression, and that is going to, what this is going to do is take every value for quiz 3, and it's going to subtract from it the mean for the distribution and divide that by the standard deviation. So we're going to get a new variable with all these complete values. And we'll see here, we go to the bottom of our output, and it says, I've done this for you. So see, it said I'm computing this new variable, and I'm executing. So let's go over and take a look at, there it is. So we can write in here, quiz 3 z-scores. And we can toggle over to the other side either by clicking on data view or just by double clicking on this variable. And there it is. So let's actually move it. We're going to grab it and move it up right next to quiz 3. So there it is. There is quiz 3, and there's quiz 3 z-scores. And so remember, each of these z-scores is telling us how much of a standard deviation is the score above or below the mean. Because that's what we've done when we've taken our otherwise normally distributed variable, and we had established that in the previous video. Remember, we can only create z-scores for variables that are normally distributed because that unit normal is a normal curve. So here we have the 76.5, and that is about 1/4 of a standard deviation below the mean. Remember, that mean was 77.012, so that's just below it. So we have a range here of, let's see, a low of -2.31 to, this looks like the high score, the maximum score of almost 2 standard deviations above the mean. And so there's not, if you look here, there's not a lot of, it's not a huge amount of variability. And so even though this score is reasonably low, it's pretty close to 77. This is almost 2 standard deviations above the mean. So that just tells us there's not a lot of variability in this distribution because we have a small standard deviation. So that was our z-score. Let's go ahead and try one more. And what we're going to do is we are going to create a final grade for this student. Now, one thing we'll see here is that I have taken the liberty of putting in some missing data. So if we look at project 2, let's go ahead and look at project 2. let's just ask for some frequencies. We're going to reset here. Project 2, move that over. Let's get the mean and the median, the maximum and the minimum and the standard deviation. Let's get rid of the frequency tables. And we're going to hit OK. Now, when we look down here, we see, oh, there are only 18 valid values or responses. There are 7 missing ones. Now, right now, you'll see the minimum is 66.2. And that's because SPSS knows that these dots signify missing data. So if we don't have different kinds of missing data, it's probably okay to just leave these as dots. I like to go ahead and change it, just so that I'm consistent across all variables where there might be the missing data. So I'm going to go into transform, and we talked about this last night. So we'll just do a little review. We don't need to create a whole new variable, so we're just going to recode an existing variable into, and we're not going to create a new one. So we're going to take project 2, move it over into the variable. It has to be a numeric. Here is a numeric variable, and old and new values. So in this case, we're interested in taking all those missing data, and we're going to call it -9. And don't forget to add this. And this is where it's going to have that command come together. Hit continue, and then hit OK. So here we have it. It is executed. So let's take a look again. So here we see a bunch of negative 9s. So those are taken care of. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create an average for this student or these students for the semester. So we're going to use the compute again. So we go into compute variable, and we're going to hit reset, because we're not going to work with what we already had there. So I'm going to create a final. And all I'm going to do, I can actually go over here. Excuse me. And I'm going to look, clicked on all, and I'm going to find, should be sum. And so sum here tells you, so we want to create, actually we don't want to create a sum, we want to create an average. So let's find the mean. So this is actually nice. It tells you what this expression should look like. And so we don't have to put in all the values summed and then divide by the number of students, although we could. We can just use this shortcut. So I'm going to go ahead and use this shortcut. And it's telling me here that I have to have in parentheses. And then in here, it wants me to put in all of the numeric variables. So quiz 1, and all I need to do is separate them by a comma. Quiz 2, comma, test 1, move it over, quiz 3, move it over, comma, skipping over the z-score and adding project 1, test 2, project 2. And that's it. We're hitting OK. Tells us it did it. So let's take a look. So if we look at our variable view, there's the final score. So we moved it up, and I can type in here, final score, or average score. And let's go ahead and click over. So here it is. So for each student, here is their average. But look at this. This is so strange. This is so low. Why is this so low when this student actually had really pretty high scores? What happened? Why is it so low? Aha! And the reason is we created these scores, and then we did not go back and tell SPSS what to do with it. So let's go to quiz 3, and this is where we have our -9s. And we need to tell SPSS that -9, that's missing. Treat it as missing. Hit save, go back to transform, compute, And we're just going to hit OK. We're not going to make any changes. We're just going to run it again. And we're going to say change existing variable. Yeah, we want you to change that variable. And let's take a look. Let's see if it has changed. So now look at this student. Oh, it's project 2. That's the problem. Project 2 is the one that has the missing values. And so we run that computation one more time. And that has that negative in it. So let's take a look at the final. Aha. Now we have scores that look more reasonable. So in sum, when you want to deal with your missing variables, if your missing variables are not already identified as missing and they're just dots, the first step you can do, if you would like to change them from dots, is to go and recode into the same variable and rename those missing dots as -9s. And then that second part is to go in and tell SPSS here what to do with those -9s. Because otherwise it's going to treat them like they're real data, and you'll see that they're going to skew your data. That's what they're going to do. And that's what we saw. So what we needed to do is go in and tell SPSS -9 is not actually data. It's a missing variable.